Good day. For today's guided notes, we will be focusing on dividing rational numbers. Our essential question is, how do you divide rational numbers? Our vocabulary term is quotient, which is the answer to a division problem. And as you'll see here, we have that friendly little, oh, hold on, changing the font of the pen. There we go. We have this friendly little table here to remind us of our rules, which we know are the same rules for multiplication. So a positive divided by a negative is a negative. A negative divided by a positive is a negative. A negative divided by a negative is a positive. And a positive divided by a positive, again, is a positive. Our first example, we're going to look at dividing rational numbers using decimals. Over 5 months, Carlos wrote 5 checks for a total of $323.75 to pay for his cable TV service. His cable bill is the same amount each month. What was the change in Carlos's bank account each month to pay for cable? Our first step is to figure out which number is represented here using a negative. So writing 5 checks, there's no such thing as writing negative 5 checks, but we do know that money coming out of a bank account is represented as a negative. So that is negative $323.75. And now we need to determine the sign of the quotient. So we know we're dividing a negative $323.75 by the positive 5, because he's writing 5 checks that equal that amount. So we know a negative divided by a positive is a negative. So now for the division. $323 divided by 5. 5 goes into 32 6 times. Sorry, you can't see that. That is a 6. 5 times 6 is 30. Bring down the 2. Bring down the 3. 5 goes into 23 4 times. I'm going to move up the decimal point. The decimal point does not move. It just goes straight up. 5 times 4 is 20. Bring down the 3 when I subtract. Bring down the 7. 5 goes into 37 7 times. And I've got 5 goes into 25 5 times. So we see here that each check he wrote was for $64.75. And because he's writing a check, it would be negative 64.75. All right, make some more room here. Our second example, dividing rational numbers using fractions. Now right here, I'll ask you this question. How many of you have ever heard of a complex fraction? A complex fraction, as we can see here, is a fraction within a fraction. And if you can recall what we've talked about in class, we know that this line right here means division. So I'm just going to rewrite this 7/10 divided by negative 1/5. But now we know, if we can recall from when we learned how to divide fractions, that we really don't divide, but we merely multiply by the reciprocal. And the reciprocal is, when we look at the second fraction, the reciprocal is, originally in a fraction we have numerator over denominator. The reciprocal is the denominator over the numerator. So when I rewrite this, my first fraction does not change, 7/10. The multiplication, or the division, becomes multiplication. So think about that. Keep, change, flip. Keep the first fraction, change the sign, flip the second fraction. So I really have 7/10 times negative 5/1. And when we multiply fractions, we can cross-reduce before we multiply. So 5 and 10, that's numerator and denominator. I can divide both 5 and 10 by 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 10 divided by 5 is 2. So when I multiply straight across now, I have 7 times 1, which is 7. 2 times 1, which is 2. Now what I have here is an improper fraction, so I need to turn that into a mixed number. 2 goes into 7 3 times, which is 6, 1 left over. So really I have 3 1/2. Now let's look at our original problem. I have a positive 7/10 divided by a negative 1/5. So a positive divided by a negative makes this a negative 3 1/2. Now what I'd like you to do is try these two your turn on your own questions. And again, as always, if you have any questions, mark them down and we will discuss them tomorrow in class.